The $420 million merger between Seven West Media and Southern Cross Austereo, announced earlier this week, has brought immediate sharp criticism from some shareholders. The reason is that, again, a company is allowed to take over or merge with another business without asking its shareholders. In this case, Seven West Media will go to its shareholders, but Southern Cross Austereo will not. And this follows the case of James Hardie being allowed to make a $14 billion takeover of the US decking business AZEK without a vote of its shareholders. We spoke with the Australian Shareholders Association's Chief Executive, Rachel Waterhouse, about it yesterday.
I think boards need to take greater respect for who's owning the company and how they engage with them when they're considering a merger. In this example here, Seven West shareholders get to have a say, but Southern Cross shareholders don't get to have a say. So how is that fair? And that's really the question for shareholders here, not only with the example you talked about with James Hardie, but here with a media merger where one set of shareholders don't count.
Now, in the case of Southern Cross Austereo, one of the first investors to raise concerns was Gabriel Radzyminski, Managing Director of Sandon Capital, who joins me now. Gabriel, many thanks for your time. Why were you so quick out of the blocks in criticising this deal?
Look, we've been critical of the company for a while, so for us this is just a continuation of a bit of a fight that's been going on for a few months. And this is the thing that we feared the most. We didn't know that the Seven West deal was going to be done, but we feared that they might do something like this when put under pressure by shareholders. We'd spoken with the chairman last week, before the deal was announced, to discuss the possibility that the company might make some changes to its constitution to prevent this very thing from happening. Now, unfortunately, our timing was a few days off.
So that being the case, just explain why it would be that a loophole would emerge in the ASX rules that would even allow this to occur. I mean, this is a material change in the business that is actually going to happen without the shareholders getting a say.
Absolutely. So let me explain. So the listing rules are reasonably prescriptive, and that's good. Keep in mind, they're ultimately trying to balance between the interests of the issuers, the companies that list on the ASX, and the shareholders. And frankly, I think the shareholders come off second best far too often. And this is one of those examples. For example, there's a protection in the listing rules that restricts a company's ability to issue more than 15% of its shares without getting shareholder approval. And that's good because it protects shareholders from dilutionary share issues or share issues that might occur if someone's trying to protect themselves from people like us. But where there is an exemption or a loophole is if you are doing a merger or a scheme of arrangement. You can issue up to 100% of your shares without getting shareholder approval. So that's the first loophole. The second part, and this is the thing that is most frustrating about the Southern Cross transaction, is that it's effectively, from an economic perspective, this is a nil premium reverse takeover. Seven West Media is practically taking over Southern Cross. But what they've done very cleverly is they've made sure that the merger ratio is 50.1 of the combined entity will go to Southern Cross shareholders, 49.9 goes to Seven West Media shareholders. And those two numbers are very important because had it been 50-50, they would have triggered the reverse takeover provisions of the listing rules, which would have meant that the ASX would have looked into it and would have required a shareholder vote. Yet when you look at the transaction, 50.1, the Seven West board are gaining a majority of the board seats. The Seven West CEO is becoming the CEO of the merged entity. So if you take 2 out of 3 of the simple measures of control, they're well and truly in favour of Seven West Media. And the share count is literally 0.1% in favour of Southern Cross.
There's a couple of things about this deal also that are curious, and that is that Southern Cross Austereo had basically sold its regional television networks to Seven West Media somewhat earlier. And under this deal, those shareholders ultimately get those assets back. And yet, only a short time ago, the management basically had sold them because they either didn't think they were performing or thought they'd got a great price or just didn't want them.
Well, one of the things that we like about Southern Cross is that it was following this all-about audio strategy. in traditional media, there's a lot of challenges that they're facing from the big tech companies. That's not going to change. But we've always thought that radio was one of those less bad parts of the old media, and partly because people are stuck in their cars and have nothing else to do but to listen to radio. So it's about ears and being in cars. That's oversimplifying a little bit. But this all about audio strategy was something we thought made sense. We were critical about their cost controls. We thought the company should go harder on cost. But as you say, they jettisoned the TV stations, which were a millstone around their neck. Investors applauded that change, and now they've gone straight back into the TV business. And it beggars belief why they would have done that, given that literally as of Friday last week, before the transaction was announced, this was an all-about audio company, Southern Cross. And now they've decided to go back into TV. And as you say, they're buying back into the TV assets that they just got rid of.
OK, just a quick one. Do you imagine that maybe they jumped this quickly because they're also fearful that Nine, which has $700 million cash after its domain sale, effectively could have also been out there hunting for radio assets?
Look, possibly, but I think that this is where the crux of it is for us, is Southern Cross was becoming a nice, simple, streamlined business with low debt. They needed to simply do nothing. All they needed to do was sit back and wait and be patient and see what might happen, including, for example, as you suggest, perhaps a Channel 9 approach. But no, instead what they did is they went and prosecuted a transaction with another company that frankly needs them more than Southern Cross needs Seven West. You know, we're going from a company, as I mentioned, with very low levels of debt, 33% debt to equity ratio, to a merged entity that has 84%. Now, that's a more than doubling of the debt levels for us as Southern Cross shareholders from where we are now. But the flip side is for Seven West Media, it takes them from about 133% debt to equity down to 84%. So it's a great deal for them.
I'll tell you what, Gabriel Radzyminski, Managing Director of Sandon Capital, you make an awful lot of sense there, especially about those shareholders not getting a vote. And many thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Ross. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.